Something strange is happening in the Gulf of Aden. A key trade route that was once the heart of global shipping is now a literal war zone. US Navy destroyers fend off attacks almost daily, and the stakes couldn't be higher. How the US is responding can be no better seen than in the most recent attack on US shipping that occurred late in the evening of the 9th of December, 2024. The USS Stockdale and O'Kane were making best speed towards their rendezvous point. With all their main engines online, the ships were moving at an impressive 30+ knots as they closed with their objective. The ships were rushing towards their rendezvous because they were to escort 3 large American merchant ships as they traversed the Gulf of Aden and Red Sea to reach the Suez Canal. But what used to be considered almost like a milk run has turned into anything but that. Since October 2023, Houthi rebels have carried out more than 100 publicly confirmed attacks on civilian merchant and naval shipping in the area. These attacks, ranging from barrages of anti-ship cruise missiles, one-way attack drones, mines, small boats, and even heliborne raiding parties, have turned this crucial waterway into the most dangerous stretch of maritime real estate in the world. Think of it as a water version of the infamous route Irish at the height of the Iraq War. As the Stockdale and O'Kane linked up with the 3 merchant ships, they conducted their pre-convoy safety brief. One destroyer would be in the front of the formation, acting as the guide, while the other would take up the rear. Each of the 3 merchants would then get in a straight line behind the lead destroyer, because the most likely threat axis would be to the formation's starboard. If an attack came from that direction, the merchants would haul out to port while the 2 destroyers would come about to starboard to provide maximum coverage. With these ground rules in place, the convoy began heading westward at the merchants' top speed of around 20 knots to spend the least amount of time in the high-threat area. After several hours of steaming with no indications or warnings of threats, the crews aboard the warships began to feel more at ease, and were thinking today was more of a gossip while eating ramen noodles kind of night. However, that was not to be the case. Shortly before midnight, one of the destroyer's spy radars began picking up a suspicious return. Though it was faint, the fact that the return was on a constant bearing and range meant that it could not be clutter like a cloud or weather disturbance. As the watchstanders down in the Combat Information Center began hooking the track and analyzing it, other sailors manning the EW corner began to pick up electronic signals from the same bearing and range as the unknown air contact that correlated to the known emitters from an Iranian Shah drone. With a positive confirmation of an incoming kamikaze drone, the ships sounded their general quarters alarms. As the entire crew of both ships awoke to get to their battle stations, the destroyers broke radio silence and immediately ordered the merchants to haul out to port. Just as instructed, the merchants instantly turned to get behind the destroyers as they came about to get maximum illuminator coverage on the incoming threat. But this was expected by the Houthis. As the war in Ukraine has shown, one of the best ways to conduct missile attacks is to use both drones and missiles. By sending a wave of drones first, the attacking side can get the defenders to waste ammunition and focus on assets that are not the main effort. But the crews of the Stockdale and the O'Kane knew this after the Navy had thwarted numerous similar attacks before it. Because of this, they vectored a French aircraft and a US Navy helicopter to intercept the drones, while the crews awaited the likely missile threat. As the aircraft dealt with the slower drones that were not worth a multi-million-dollar missile, the main attack came in the form of an anti-ship cruise missile that was seen barreling toward the formation at nearly the speed of sound. But the crews were ready. Almost as soon as it picked up the threat, one of the destroyers fired a salvo of SM-2 missiles toward the target. The subsequent splash across the radar screen of debris, and no more track confirmed that the SM-2s had found their mark. By the time this engagement was over, the French aircraft and Navy helicopter had reported 3 one-way attack drones destroyed as well. Although the ships remained at general quarters throughout the rest of the night, the Houthis did not try any more attacks. But how did it all come to this? Since the unprovoked Hamas invasion of Israel in October 2023, the Houthis have been an integral part of what Iran dubs the Axis of Resistance. The Axis of Resistance comprises Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank, Hezbollah in Lebanon, various militia groups in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen. Though each of these groups differs in their organization, capabilities, and goals, the one thing linking them all together is Iranian money, training, weapons, and direction for, you see, to keep the pipeline of funds and weapons pouring into these groups, they must do the bidding of Iran. In this case, the Iranians want to strike back at Israel by causing as much chaos and destruction as possible. One of the ways they have done this is through trying to cut off one of the world's most crucial waterways. Because of geography, the Bab al-Mandeb Strait that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden is the most critical choke point outside the Strait of Hormuz in the world. This is because any traffic that wants to use the Suez Canal has to transit through this area. The Houthis are the Iranian-backed terrorists in Yemen that control a large portion of the territory that borders this critical choke point. Though the Houthis have been carrying out attacks against shipping here for years, since October 2023, the Houthis have conducted over 100 attacks against civilian and naval vessels. The main reason why is that Iran wants to sow chaos in the Middle East and hurt Israel for their war in Gaza. However, in all reality, very few Israeli flagged ships have been attacked, with the Houthis seemingly attacking any and all merchants it can get good targeting data on. Because of these wanton attacks, the US Navy has spearheaded a global task force that uses a wide range of weapons and assets to thwart Houthi attacks. How the US Navy is able to smack Houthi missiles out of the sky so easily is thanks to its plethora of advanced onboard sensors and weapons that are able to coordinate defense in depth in real time with other air and surface assets. At the core of its defense is the spy radar. The spy radar is, without a doubt, the best air search radar ever made for a naval vessel, and is certainly among the top contenders for the best military radar ever fielded by anyone. What makes it so unique is the continuous sweeping of multi-phased arrays that blast high-intensity radiation in all directions. The receivers on the spy radar are so sensitive that they can accurately track contacts out to about 200 nautical miles, and more advanced versions of spy can reportedly exceed 300 nautical miles. With older versions of spy capable of tracking up to 100 targets and newer versions supposedly able to track up to 500 targets at one time, there is little this radar cannot see. However, it is not alone. When spy gets all of this data, the command and decision part of the Aegis combat system takes over. As these powerful computers process all this raw data, the system will categorize the data into a series of if-then statements. For example, if this contact is above a certain speed, then categorize it as hostile. Or if this contact is traveling in a known civilian air corridor, then classify it as neutral, etc. However, the computers inside the C&D system are doing thousands of these calculations every second. This data is then presented to watchstanders in the Combat Information Center on their consoles, so they can make decisions about potential threats in near real time. However, these decisions are not made in a vacuum, since before missiles leave the ship, the Tactical Action Officer considers data from other sources, including the Joint Tactical Terminal and the SLQ-32. Pronounced SLQ-32, the Joint Tactical Terminal, or JTT, is a system onboard US Navy warships that aggregates data from a variety of DoD sensors and displays it to combat watchstanders in real time. Among the most significant pieces of information JTT can display are the real-time infrared signals collected by satellites, which can show the IR signatures from missile and aircraft launches. While this information will not have the fidelity of spy data, it is certainly a helpful situational awareness tool, especially when launches occur outside spy's maximum range. Another sensor also gives the crews early warning of missile and drone attacks. This system is called the SLQ-32. The SLQ-32 is the primary electronic warfare weapon on board US Navy destroyers. While there have been various iterations throughout the years, the main purpose of the SLQ-32 is to use its classified library of known emitter frequencies to identify electronic signals. This is because every radar and emitter in the world uses its own unique frequency band, and through years of data collection, the Navy has created a virtual library of all known ship, aircraft, missile, and drone radars and emitters. With this information at their fingertips, the crews on board the Stockdale and O'Kane can instantly differentiate something like a civilian airliner from a Charlie 802 missile, the most common one used by the Houthis. However, these are just how ships can detect incoming threats, and not necessarily how to deal with them. Whenever ships decide to delete something from existence, there is a huge inventory of missiles to choose from. For the garden variety of low, slow missiles employed by the Houthis, the crew could opt to use an older model SM-2 missile. However, for more advanced threats like high divers or sea-skimming missiles, the Tactical Action Officer could choose to employ more advanced versions of the SM-2, or even an SM-6 missile for very fast threats or threats of unknown capability. The Navy uses SM-3 missiles for ballistic missile defense, but these are not the type of missiles used in point defense convoy operations like what the Stockdale and O'Kane are conducting right now. But remember how we said earlier that air defense is not done in a vacuum? Proper air defense needs to ensure range, depth, and a variety of weapons and sensors to make the most robust air defense possible. Fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters are all vital parts of air defense, and with proper coordination, they will make an air defense network nearly impenetrable. Integrating aircraft, such as in this engagement, has several main benefits. The first is weapon conservation. Vertical launch cells that house SM missiles on destroyers cannot be reloaded at sea. Because of this, the Navy wants to preserve this ammunition for higher priority threats like missiles. Many aircraft and helicopters can shoot down much slower drones with more expendable Sidewinder missiles, AMRAAM missiles, or good old-fashioned gunfire. The second main benefit of using aircraft is range. Though the exact details of the 9th of December engagement remain classified, the U.S. convoy commander probably had the aircraft flying close to shore to act as an early warning system, and a way to engage threats at further range before SPY could get good data on them. Of course, all these weapons and tactics are geared toward a defensive posture. To beat the Houthis, the U.S. Navy must go on the offense to ensure these attacks stop. And if past performance indicates future behavior, the Navy has something in store for the Houthis. On the 17th of October, 2024, the U.S. Air Force conducted one of the most crushing strikes against the Houthis to date. In this attack, several B-2 bombers conducted an unopposed assault against 5 hardened underground weapons storage facilities. This attack destroyed a huge portion of the Houthis' stockpile of anti-ship cruise missiles, drones, and other advanced weapons. Although the U.S. has yet to carry out a retaliatory strike as of the making of this video, any such attack will certainly be thought about carefully. That is because recent media reports have suggested that Russia has been one of the main suppliers of targeting data to the Houthis. This fact, combined with the ties of an ever-increasingly desperate Iran, could mean that a strike that takes out foreign personnel or severely degrades the Houthis' capability to strike targets could cause a region already gripped by violence to spiral further down the path of a wider regional war. Bye for now.